Hey, hi, hello, happy Halloween, and welcome back to the Big Gold Belt channel. It's Gravity here. And today, Najir and I are back to ham it up about one of our favorites, the newest installment, the sixth installment in the VHS franchise, which is VHS 85, because we're going backwards now. This is a banger, y'all. We're going to get into it, but VHS 85 just made its world premiere at Fantastic Fest just a couple weeks ago, and it will be dropping on Shudder on October 6th. And you're going to have to run, don't walk, because I had a really good time with this one. And sorry, one more thing. We also have some awesome interviews with two of the filmmakers from VHS 85. You can check out on the channel now. You can check out me talking with Natasha Carmani and also Najir hamming it up with Gigi Sao Guerrero. That was a lot. Okay, now let's get into them because we got five of these bad boys. And the clock is ticking. So let's start with the first, right? The first chapter, the first short is called No Wake, and it is directed by Mike P. Nelson, who you might recognize if you have seen the most recent Wrong Turn installment in the franchise. That one was a banger too. So when this was announced, I was definitely excited to see his name on the project because I was definitely a fan. But this one came in real strong. I think this might have to be my favorite of this installment.
Okay.
It was strong. So basically, we have kind of a classic, let's say summer slasher. We're following a group of friends who are having a great time. They're heading down to the lake to, do
Lake.
young adult.
That's it. Headed down to the lake in the story.
And roll the credits. Yep, roll the credits. Roll them right now. So we're getting real typical 80s slasher vibes here, especially with the summer camp, and we have some sort of supernatural phenomenon that's going on that doesn't quite make sense. I don't want to give up too much. What do you think about this one, Najir?
I think there's a little bit of both here for me. It's like, there's definitely something supernatural, but before that, I feel like it's super practical. I mean, you could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time and things happen. That's sort of the vibe I was getting on first. It's just like, oh shoot, who is it? But again, I had to remember it's VHS. I was like, okay, so what is it at this point? And it makes itself very clear that it is a what instead of a who. But I think, me, I don't mess around with like going on boats and partying and any other recreational things and stuff like that. It's just not my cup of tea. So I'm already like, this ain't gonna go good. The fact that you're going on the lake, it's a horror film, none of this is gonna go good. But then like once like the events, and not to spoil anything, but once things start to roll, my mind instantly said, see, I wouldn't have been out there in the first place. Wouldn't have had to even worry about none of this stuff. But I do agree. This was a great start to this edition of VHS. This was strong, as you mentioned, and I think it did set the tone for all of the wacky but cool, but all sorts of different things on the spectrum that they're going to give you. But I definitely did like this introduction.
Yeah, and this one comes with a bonus too. And I think maybe you fans watching can fact check me on this later. But I'm pretty sure we're breaking the formula with this one as well. So usually when we watch horror anthologies, we have maybe 3 to 5 different stories with one wraparound story, right? We talked about the wraparound story with Satanic Hispanics. And we do have a wraparound story, which is also fire. And we will get to that in just a second. But this short, No Wake, with the group of kids going to the lake, disregarding the sign that says no swimming and going swimming anyway, ends up kind of being a two-parter, like a quick bonus round, if you will, that carries over later. But trust me, you're not going to get it until you get
it. I wanted to jump in there really quickly and say, like, right, as much as we praise Satanic Hispanics for its structure, which, not to take anything away from that, and obviously there's folks contributing to both projects here. I loved how VHS definitely show you another way to do anthologies in a way that keeps you invested the entire time. Like, and because of the styling of this as a VH tape, that's a VHS tape that is constantly being recorded as, and anybody back in our era already know what time it was. I like how they really incorporate that into the story, so that you have to truly just stay, you have to stay invested the entire time to really see every story make sense. So I fully agree. Didn't have it in my notes, but you're entirely right that, like, yeah, you may not get instantly what's happening with some of these stories, but just keep watching because it does come full circle. And yeah, I think maybe some of the other ones did it. Maybe 94. I'm not sure, but I know, like, I felt when watching this, I felt like, oh, this is unique, or at least it just felt refreshing, shall I say, in watching it. So I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree. I know sometimes with VHS and the wraparound stories, it's either the wraparound story will, try to give the viewer a hint as to why these different tapes were lost in the first place. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. This time, I don't believe they did, but also I might be missing something because that's which, a rewatch is always helpful. But I will say that the wraparound story, all right, let's get into it. The wraparound story is called Total Copy, and that comes from David Bruckner, who you should know from Hellraiser last year because that one banged. They really did. And this one, although it doesn't explain anything, I think that's kind of an added bonus when the wraparound stories connect all the stories, but I don't really think it's like 100% necessary. But the great thing that this wraparound story does is matches the vibe. And I know I could say that and it could mean anything, especially in 2023, but we have to remember that this anthology is all from 1985. So it's really important, for each of the different short films to match the vibe, because after all, this is a period piece. And especially from different supernatural, slasher, this, that, sci-fi, horror, it's important to make it seem like I could have, walked into a wreckage and picked up a bunch of tapes and, here I am. And that's the way that they mesh. But this wraparound story it was giving me everything that I didn't ask for, but maybe I subconsciously did. We got like a sci-fi horror situation going on with an unknown entity that seems to be copying human life. Yeah. I'm gonna take a step back. It kind of was giving me like Flubber gone wrong. Like so wrong. Wrong. And it's body horror and it's goopy and it's gory. And also everything behind that old VHS grain, which is even more apparent now because we keep going back and back in time, really gives it that kind of ick. And we're talking like classic mad scientist here. What happens when a mad scientist who's not so mentally sound stumbles upon something extraordinary and also probably extraordinarily dangerous and lets their work, for lack of better words, consume them, which, there's a little foreshadowing there. We can flip it at the end. But it's nasty. Gross, and it's tragic, and I could see some stuff like this actually happening in present day, and I'm sure it does.
1,000%. Also, the commentary about this thing too is like, and I never, like, I guess I never really like put thought into this, but there was something that was said, like, humans always think anything that resembles humans is of human nature. It's like, I guess we kind of do think, like, we see an ape stand up, we're like, that's a human. So like, I like, it was like how it was kind of like a play on like, well, we shouldn't come in here and like have like the traditional mindset about whatever this is. However, this thing that is absolutely should, whatever you were thinking, you were probably right. that like it's a little tricky on the how they kind of want to establish the mindset with it. But I thought it was cool. I'm also like very weird about textures, so like the gooiness and all of that had me right there. I was just like, oh yeah, this, whatever this is gross. But
I'm sure that had you messed up.
1,000%. But I tips the hat to the special effects and makeup folks for really like putting that together, because it was done well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got your reaction.
Oh, yeah, you can say that for sure. For fucking sure, absolutely. So next we have Gigi Saul Guerrero's short, which is called God of Death. And this one was a fucking hoot. This was such a great time. This one is a very classic of example of taking it to the roof and then just blowing the roof off and keep going. As soon as you think that, oh, this can't get any crazier, guess what?
Yeah.
It's going to get crazier. This one really sets the scene. And I actually I read a little blurb that Miss Guerrero had wrote about her experience making the film and her inspirations behind it. And a lot of her family did survive that tragic earthquake in Mexico back in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a really cool way to like honor that. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that, you know, silly Americans, we don't know nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
given a Google, I definitely did learn something. But to create a terrifying story and apply fantasy within that is totally nuts. And I love the way that she played with the news.
Yeah.
Because I'm a 90s baby, so I can't say that I was there, but at the time I was consuming a lot of media that was left over from the late 80s,
Mm-hmm.
like television programs and ads and stuff like that,
Yeah.
telemarketing, that kind of stuff. So we have this one woman who's just an absolute bombshell who's bringing in the news. Gigi Saul Guerrero does make an appearance, a fun little cameo as well, just like she
Yeah.
did in Satanic Hispanics. And we really do get to see the origin as to how, you know, this
Earthquake.
catastrophe, this
Yeah.
natural catastrophe,
Yeah.
or was it really natural?
Yeah. True that. True
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Eat my words right there. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously when you talk about what Gigi has done over the last few months, you obviously have to tip the hat to the representation that she's a part of, and as we start to see more Latino Americans or just Latinos, period, in filmmaking and within horror, we're seeing more and more stories that are unconventional. Not unconventional because it's a bad thing. Unconventional because these aren't styling of stories that we traditionally have seen. I mean, they're good. Seeing her name attached to this, especially doubling back off of Satanic Hispanic, mag like, oh, I know she's about to bring it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's true to her culture. So it doesn't even try to appease Americans, if you ask me. So everything about it, everything about the situation, everything about the communication between folks, everything about the survival instinct, all has me on edge because you're looking at another culture in terms of how they would just traditional, how they would handle something,
Mm-hmm.
and then you add this other element to it, and it's shot in very low light, so you're in caves and stuff, or should we
Mm-hmm.
just say like sort of caves and stuff. It's a lot about it that's just like an experience. It's one that I will say, like, this is the one you put your seatbelt on for, because it takes you
Yeah.
on a ride all around. Effective jump scares, good, and even for the character. I mean, that's the thing about VHS. You typically aren't able to really invest in majority of the characters. I think there's even small little like bonds even within this story where folks you just start to like rally behind, and that's really short lived, but still you just kind of just like you're intrigued about everything that happens with this. I think
Yeah.
this is when I was peak interested for all the right reasons coming into it, and all the right reasons once it was done. I was just like that's just one I would have a feature length film. That's where
Mm-hmm.
I'm at with that. Like, flesh this out,
Yeah.
hour and a half easily with this.
Hell yeah.
Good
Let me comment
origins
on
too.
that. Let me comment on that quickly. I
Yeah.
do think that everything you said just now was intentional specifically for VHS 85, because I
Hmm.
did get that feeling of, you know, getting to know the characters in a very short amount of time. Like this isn't a feature length. I don't have a full 40 minutes to get to know the character before they
Hmm.
get stuck in this situation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um and I do think something that was pretty prominent about 80s horror is that everyone who got the axe had a villainistic quality about them, that was, you know, quick. either they're addicted to coke, they abuse women,
Yeah, yeah.
you're cheating on your husband. It's like, I'll get that real quick, which lets me know that it's okay for this person to die. But here
Yeah.
in VHS 85, in me sitting on my couch, I've noticed this 3 times. I also watched Demons last night, which came out in 1985. So
Mhm,
I'm comparing the two. Um,
mhm,
and this short, and also the one that we just spoke about, the No Wake,
mhm.
um, they both have moments, well, like pretty decent moments that let you get to know the characters, whether it be just a glimpse, a couple lines that let you know that this is something that this person is going through, or the way that the characters talk to one another, like in the first one. you know that kind of dialogue, if you were to stick it into an actual 80s film, tells me that all these people will probably survive or make it very close to the end.
That
Because
exactly.
if I didn't know all these, like, what's the point of telling me all these things if they're just going to get the axe later on? But I
Right.
do think that that was very, very much on purpose, a nod to the 80s. And also, it trips us up because, of course, us horror fans, we think we know everything. So that was definitely a wrench thrown in, and I definitely noticed it in more than one short, and
Yeah.
definitely something to comment about. And the only other thing I wanted to comment on is that I'm just really happy that VHS franchise allows filmmakers uh, to show their content in their native tongue, which
Yeah.
I don't think it would hit the same, honestly, if this short was in Spanish, or if Timo Gijanto's shorts in VHS 2 and 94, they wouldn't hit the same if they were in English. But the language has nothing to do with the date that it's appearing in, or the
Yeah.
structure. It just gives people an easier outlet to communicate what they're actually trying to get done. And shout out to VHS for facilitating that. I think it's
I
dope.
I don't know if I conveyed it as good as you did, but that's exactly how I feel, to the T, to the T. And only thing I really want to add, only other thing I want to add is just the cinematography in this one. It's just fantastic.
Sheesh.
Just the
Yeah.
you have to understand that there is a natural disaster natural disaster happening here, and like, yeah, the news coverage, as you mentioned, the camera shaking, and obviously you got, I guess for lack of better words here, but you got this GoPro style of actually
Mm-hmm.
being in the trenches there. You're so invested with you know what's happening, the survival of these folks. Even the folks that didn't make it instantly, you're still kind of like, dang, you thinking about decision making and whatnot. It's a lot that goes on in this, and I would easily just like to just I would flesh this one out, but yeah, I enjoyed this, and a lot of emotion from all of the actors in this one. This was probably one of my
Absolutely.
favorites in this version of VHS.
There's no poor performances. I don't think there was any poor performances across any of them.
Hmm.
But speaking of performances, let's move on to the next short, which is Natasha Kermani's short titled Techno God. But listen to this. Okay, it's spelled TKNOGD, Techno God. And
Yeah.
this is pretty out of this world, if I may say so myself. We basically have a taped lecture that, has somehow been misplaced. I wonder why. But we have a lecture from a very inspirational woman who courts the audience and enlightens them on the dangers of technology, about how we as humans have basically lost God, and by leaving God behind, we completely shift our focus to technology, which doesn't even have a God. I don't know. Hey everyone, let's find out. And you know what they say: you fuck around and you find out. And that is exactly what happened. And I thought this one was very different, and
Yep.
I'll tell you why. Because the the one thing that connects VHS, in general, not these period pieces, but just in general, is that it's all found footage, right?
Yeah.
So most of the time we're getting that, like what you said, we're in the trenches. It's the
Mm-hmm.
GoPro style. You can feel the cameraman running. Sometimes it gets
Mm-hmm.
a little dizzy, but this here is actually staged as like a pre-recorded performance. And when I spoke to Natasha Kermani about it, she actually filmed it that way. They just filmed it as it was a performance, not
Yeah.
like it was a movie. So they literally just recorded this performance that that hit the fan. And it stands. It just
Yeah.
stands. Don't try to
Yeah.
conjure up a techno god. Just don't. Just leave it alone.
I first of all, the speakeasy vibes for me. I mean, there's a moment of silence before this even gets started that is very unsettling because
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, you still have to remember. And even if you somehow forgot immediately what just happened in the last scene or the last short before this, you're just like, yeah, let me brace myself for the wildness of this one. And there's like a very abrupt silence before this person gets on mic and says anything, and then she hits a few outtakes higher than you typically like to talk, and you're like, oh, okay, what's going on here? So I think this one easily hooks you in. It is very different. I enjoyed it for the fact that like there was like little humor, like the when you talk about the technology, one guy was like, okay, I call this my iPhones. And I was like,
Oh
my
yeah,
eyes phones. I was like,
iPhones.
yeah, eyes phones. I was like, wait, did you say iPhone? But I was like, okay, cool. I like that because that's exactly what we would have did in the 80s, and then probably another device that is called that, honestly. Um, but ultimately, like, I'm all for any silliness in the metaverse, no matter if it's
Mm-hmm.
the metaverse in the current day or the metaverse back in the 80s here. I'm all
Yeah.
for the fact that the metaverse is out here claiming lives. Like this right here. I mean, I need the next one to have like a cryptocurrency or like some type of
Oh,
like I
hey,
need
don't be giving me your ideas now. Don't be giving them away for free. Write that down. Write that down. Write that down.
what's the other thing everybody was buying? Those what do you call it? NFTs. Yeah, give me an NFT demon. Because
Mm-hmm.
this is what this
Ooh, I
yeah, this
like
is what this
that.
story is doing. It's give me that like I never actually thought about that, but now that we're here, you know what? Cool. And
Yeah, yeah.
I ate this story all out. This one was so unique that I just enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it was different.
Metaverse
It was
demon.
kind of giving me it was giving me Steve Jobs meets L. Ron Hubbard meets Grace Jones,
Yeah.
but like we're in like Tron language right now.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you put
Mm-hmm.
all that together, then you get this really weird freaking performance. And I
Yeah.
do think that like this theme that, ooh, technology is so dangerous, that's always going to be relevant. It's going to be relevant in the 80s. It's going to be relevant
Yep.
80 years from now. We're always
Yep.
going to have
Yep.
these conversations. So they just always fit. They really
Yep.
do always fit. But I do like the gags. And, it's silly and it's a gag and it gets a little effed up crazy later on. But I do
Mm-hmm.
think, as shallow as it sounds, there is a lesson to be learned here that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
maybe not a lesson, but maybe just a little bit of a warning. But yeah, you think that this performance or this short is just pretty straightforward, but we actually do have some really sick practical effects in the end as a
Yeah.
treat that you made it to the end of the lecture without blowing your brains out or something
Yeah.
like that. Yes.
Yep. 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 Hey, hold on. Because, like, yeah, when you talk about the practical stuff, I should have did my research, but whoever this actor is that is obviously either doing the stunts herself or not, and if not, then the stunt person obviously you should get your flowers too. I'm just telling you that what happens in the metaverse, you play in the metaverse, still follows the same rule of fuck around and find out. Just because it's digital, don't mean that in
Mhm.
the real world that you can't take a L. And the fact that this body is just being thrown around because of the events of the metaverse, oh my God, I couldn't stop laughing. And as you mentioned, you do get something very, very cool at the end of this, which also tips hat to the special effects makeup design team. They
Mhm.
they nailed this one as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, moving on to something very special effects heavy, um, is the last short. which is called Dream Kill.
Yeah.
And Dream Kill was a little bit of a stickler for me. I will be honest, I did have to go back and watch it again because it
Yeah.
wasn't really sticking.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it sleepy, but it takes up some time. And
Yeah.
the time that you're left in between learning context about what's going on in the story, we get these really beautiful and I guess delirious is a good word,
Yeah.
sequences that describe what we're about to have to figure out. So this is a crime story, which is different, and of course, again,
Mhm.
once again, I'm thinking about satanic Hispanics, because we
Mhm.
are back in the, what do you call that? Like the questioning room when you commit
Yeah.
a felony and then question.
Interrogation.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
The interrogate.
Mhm.
Never been arrested before. The interrogation room. Uh, and we kind of got a time travel situation here when there's these awful, terrible crimes, murders, beheadings, all types of ballistic trauma, like you name it, are kind of being predicted and being led on to the police before they even happen.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see. The name of the actor is escaping my brain right now, but we just saw him in these. Well, not just, but we saw him in the sequel to It, or actually, no, he was in both It's, um, and is just phenomenal. But I do think that his performance this time was a little lackluster, probably not
Yeah.
because of his skills, but just because of the content that was giving to him.
Right. Right. Right.
That's a
Right.
real funny guy.
Yeah.
And I've seen before, like he is very tear invoking. He is
Yeah.
very emotion invoking. But to be honest with you, I didn't get that much emotion at all
Yeah.
from this last one. It was shot beautifully. But
Mhm.
I think that maybe it's an editing thing for me. I don't know. What did you think about this one?
Listen, this gonna sound so ignorant, but I'm just gonna just got to say it anyway. And you talking about James Ransom, by the way. Um,
Thank you.
it is something horrifying to a bunch of white folks with guns shooting out the door. So all I know is
Correct.
the way how they grabbed their straps. I was like, oh shit. But I think this was cool because I do love a good murder mystery. So you pretty much putting together two of my favorite genres here. And the fact of this, I mean, we're seeing bodies get dumped in with full ammunition. So and that and, like the effects of that was also really cool as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, this one was a little tricky because I was having a hard time establishing the tone. Um and I felt like maybe I was might have missing minor details in, but also the cuts with this one too, because there was moments in the interrogation room. There was moments where they were actually at the crime scene. There was like commuting. There was this other little thing kind of going on as well too. There was a lot, but I will say the true saving grace of this was like the end. I felt
Mhm.
like there's a particular like moment in the hallway, and I think it's even part of the trailer too. But in the hallway, when bullets are flying and all sorts of different things, I thought that was really cool. But also, I will say that like I did enjoy like the weird interactions between certain characters. There was a particular character who got a bunch of bullets dumped into her, and she decided that she needed to get back up afterwards, and then she decided to off herself, and then she decides she needs to get up again. So I'm like, all right, at this point now, she got a cheat code or something. So I'm ready to see what she's gonna do next. And then there's this emo kid, which you always got questions about the emo kid. So
Oh, the emo kid. So suspicious. So incredibly suspicious. Nobody trusts the emo kid.
can't even go to the mailbox without the emo kid doing something. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
yeah, interesting.
Maybe it's me because so this short was by Scott Derrickson and he also did The Black Phone. And I
Right,
did
right,
feel a similar way about The Black Phone.
yeah,
And for both of these, The Black Phone and for Dreamkill, I liked both of them. And what is very strong is the vibe. and the tone, and I guess the way that the atmosphere makes you feel.
Yeah.
But I guess at the end of the day, I'm like a story heavy girl. I want the lore that goes
Yeah.
along with the I want the lore that goes along with the gore.
Yeah.
Excuse me for being corny, but yeah. Um there it is.
And also too, I will say, like you mentioned James. I mean, he has like history. He's also on the Black Phone as well too. So like it it I feel like there was definitely a level of there was just a level of just familiarity with this one. So this one didn't reinvent the wheel. It was cool. And I thought it definitely was like a good go home short of this edition of VHS. But
Mhm.
it wasn't like it didn't blow my mind away like how like previous endings of VHS had. This was
I
just like,
agree.
okay, cool. So it's a solid piece of work is where I would go at with that.
Mhm.
So
I agree. Totally.
yeah,
Absolutely. All right, well that's all the shorts.
yeah,
Um I really like this installment. And I gotta say, like, I've been a fan of the VHS franchise since before they started doing this whole period piece thing. But
yeah,
this period piece thing is really giving it to me. It is really
yeah,
giving it to me. I can't even imagine where they would go next. I know
yeah,
I already said that when they came out with 99.
yeah,
But here I am saying it again in
yeah,
hopes that somebody will listen to me and maybe give
yeah.
me VHS 78. You know?
Okay,
You
okay.
know, get a little classic horror up in here. Come on, come on. But yes,
uh
again, anything else? Last words, Najir.
Yeah, two quick things. It's just the array of directors here are all very prominent within this genre. And
Mhm.
even though, because I did want to make sure I put respect on Scott, because I thoroughly enjoyed The Black Phone. I thought that was one of my favorite films of that year, which honestly took a long time for that film to get released because of the pandemic and whatnot. I appreciate him coming together, working with folks he's worked with in the past, and then obviously with his kids also involved. So it's really cool. I think from beginning to end, this is probably the most solid of the VHS. However, I gotta be very stern to my initial thoughts before I went in this, and I said, which one of these could possibly trump Ozzy's Dungeon, which is the best short of all of
Oh.
VHS.
I
And
love that one.
until somebody can dethrone Flying Lotus, I don't want to hear it right now because that's the bar. But there's definitely a lot of good work in this. I do not want to discredit anybody for what they've done because there's uniqueness in this. There's representation in this. The cinematography in some of these joints are fantastic. And then again, as I mentioned, like with Scott, a very just solid work. And you know what? I'll say one more compliment for a short, I think he put together a whole film. And that's also something you don't
Yeah,
typically get.
absolutely. Mhm.
You know, the ones was like, okay, I got the vision here, beginning to end, in a whole short. In some shorts, you got like, you just inject it into a particular part or you're leaving wanting more, which is not a bad problem as well, too. But typically you don't get the more. But I think like it's just a complete, solid, self-contained story. And then overall, this is a very strong another outing for the VHS franchise.
Absolutely. And I
So
don't think we're gonna be slowing down, so I
yeah,
will be definitely taking notes this Comic-Con in case somebody wants to announce the next installment in the VHS franchise, because y'all snuck up on me last year
yeah,
with this one
that's
for
right.
sure.
That's right. And also, just if I had to throw my tradition, let's go in the future. Let's go
Oh, that's
VHS
crazy.
like
You're crazy.
2030, 2040. Go in the future, 2099. Make it all in the era
Whoa,
of cyberpunk. Go crazy. That listen.
that's wild. That's wild. Although I think I think we should go back before we start to go forward. The only reason why I say that, not that I don't want to see some like future dystopian horror, because I definitely do. Um Analog horror is like so in right now. Like it is so in right now. So this came right on time. And if you play your cards right, then I'm sure we will be getting some more analog horror, because The girlies love the cracklies, okay? The girlies love the film. The girlies
Yeah.
love the scratch tapes. We love all of it. Yes. It's seasoning. It's seasoning to the horror. Okay? All right. Everyone, please go watch VHS 85 on Shudder. It drops on the platform on the 6th of October. If you want to get a little bit more on the inside, you should definitely check out Nigeria and I's reviews with some of the directors of this installment. Yeah, let us know what your favorite short was. Let us know what your favorite VHS installment was. I am listening and I am taking notes. Thank you so much for watching.